This is a Tankobon, and this is a magazine. What's the difference? Paper. A serialization magazine is printed on cheap recycled pulp that nobody bleached white, which is why the pages come out pink or green or yellow. It is built to be read once and binned. The Tankobon is the collected edition. White stock, a proper spine, a dust jacket. That is where the money is, which is why a chapter runs in the magazine first and is sold again months later. This is Shonen, and this is Seinen. What's the difference? Nothing about the drawing, and this is the answer people refuse to accept. Shonen and Seinen are not genres. They're the age bracket a publisher aimed a magazine at. Boys roughly 10 to 18, then men above that. Same artist, same amount of blood, different masthead. A story that moved magazines, changed demographic overnight without changing a line. Next time somebody calls a series shonen, ask which magazine it ran in, because that is the whole definition. This is a mangaka, and this is an assistant. What's the difference? Whose name is on it? The mangaka draws the panel layout, the faces and the main figures, then hands the page on. Assistants do backgrounds, buildings, crowds, speed lines, and the screen tone, often 4 or 5 of them working through the night to hold a weekly deadline. Plenty of famous artists did that job first. Look at a busy street scene and consider that the person credited may not have drawn a single window. This is Screentone and this is hatching. What's the difference? One is bought and one is drawn. Screentone comes as a printed sheet of dots on adhesive film. The artist cuts the shape out with a blade and burnishes it down, so the gray is perfectly even and the edges are suspiciously clean. Hatching is ink lines laid by hand, and the tone changes with the spacing. Under a loop, Screentone shows a regular dot grid at a fixed angle. Hatching never repeats because a hand cannot. This is Japanese binding and this is Western binding. What's the difference? Which side the spine is on. Japanese text was traditionally written in columns running down the page, and those columns run across the page in the opposite direction to English. So the book is bound on the opposite edge and the pages turn the other way. Translated manga kept it, because flipping the artwork mirrors every face and makes swordsmen change hands. Look at the spine and you have the answer. This is a Doujinshi and this is a commercial book. What's the difference? Who paid for the print run? A Doujinshi is self-published. The artist books the press, pays for the copies, and sells them from a folding table at a convention, keeping everything and answering to nobody. A commercial book comes from a publisher with an editor, a run in the tens of thousands, and a distribution deal. The paper usually gives it away, since a Doujinshi tends to be a thin, saddle-stitched pamphlet. This is manga and this is manhwa. What's the difference? Country and now format. Manga is Japanese and manhwa is Korean, and for decades the only real difference was language and binding. Then Korea moved almost entirely to the vertical, scrolling webtoon. It is drawn in full color for a phone screen, with no page turns and no spread to lay panels across. Manga stayed black and white on paper. If you're scrolling down one endless strip rather than turning pages, that is manhwa. This is manga and this is manhwa. What's the difference? Country again. Manhwa is the Chinese word, and all 3 words descend from the same 2 characters, meaning something like impromptu sketches. China's own print tradition was the Lion Huanhua, a palm-sized booklet with 1 picture a page and the text underneath, sold by the million from street stalls. Modern manhwa is mostly digital and mostly color. The words are cousins rather than translations, and each one just means comics at home. This is anime and this is animation. What's the difference? There is no difference, and that is the honest answer. Anime is simply the Japanese word for animation, clipped from the English loanword, and inside Japan it covers everything. Disney, Pixar, a bank advert. Outside Japan, the word narrowed to mean animation made in Japan, which is a borrowed word changing meaning on its way back out. So arguing about whether something counts as anime is really an argument about where the studio is. This is an OVA and this is a TV series. What's the difference? Where it was sold. An OVA, original video animation, went straight to home video with no broadcast at all. That meant no network censor, no advert breaks, and no fixed episode length. The format existed because Japan bought video recorders early and would pay a great deal for a single tape. Budget per minute was often far higher than television. If an episode runs 50 minutes and the whole thing stops after 4 of them, that is why. This is a dub and this is a sub. What's the difference? Nothing in the picture, only what comes out of the speakers. A dub replaces the original dialogue with a recording in another language, timed to the mouth flaps. A sub keeps the original voices and prints a translation along the bottom. Dubbing took hold in countries with markets big enough to pay for it, subtitling in smaller ones. Neither is more faithful by nature, because a subtitle has to fit reading speed and loses words too. This is cell animation, and this is digital animation. What's the difference? Whether the color is paint or a number. Cell animation traces the drawing onto a clear sheet of celluloid and paints the color on the underside. The stack is then photographed over a painted background, which is why old frames show faint sheet edges and the occasional trapped hair. Digital scans the same drawing and fills it with a click. The line work is still drawn on paper in plenty of studios. Only the paint stage went away. This is a storyboard and this is Genga. What's the difference? How finished the drawing is. A storyboard is rough, small, and fast. One loose sketch per shot with the timing and the camera moves written beside it. It is a plan rather than a picture. Genga is key animation, the clean drawing of the important poses that will actually appear, done to size on punch paper. Everything between the keys is filled in afterwards by somebody else. The storyboard plans the film. The keys are the film. This is a woodblock print and this is a lithograph. What's the difference? What holds the ink? A woodblock is carved, so the ink sits on raised wood and everything cut away prints white. A separate block has to be cut for every single color. A lithograph is flat. The image is drawn on limestone and grease. The stone is wetted and oily ink sticks only to the greasy marks. Woodblock leaves a slightly embossed line. Lithography holds a soft crayon smudge that no knife could ever cut. This is Ukiyo-e and this is Kuchi-e. What's the difference? Where was bound? Both are woodblock print from the same workshops, but Ukiyo-e was sold loose as a single sheet, pinned up and thrown away when it faded. Kuchi-e is a frontispiece, a folded color print tipped into the front of a novel or a literary magazine around 1900. That is why so many survive in crisp condition, and why they carry a fold down the center. One was a poster. One lived inside a book. This is an Emaki, and this is a Kibyoshi. What's the difference? One is unique, and one was printed. An Emaki is a hand-painted horizontal scroll. You unroll a section at a time, so the story moves as your hands move, and there is only ever one of it. A Kibyoshi is a cheap woodblock booklet from the 1780s with a yellow cover, pictures filling the page and text crammed into every gap around them. That crammed layout is the closest thing in old print to a comic page. This is a light novel, and this is a novel. What's the difference? Format and where it sits in the shop. A light novel is a pocket-sized paperback, bunko size, with illustrations scattered through it and a run of color plates at the front. It is aimed at readers who came from manga. A novel has none of that. Light novels are also written fast and serialised, often posted online first. The prose is not lighter by rule. The word describes a shelf and a production line, not a quality. This is a one-shot, and this is a serialised series. What's the difference? Whether it is meant to continue. A one-shot is a complete story printed once, and usually it is an audition. A new artist runs one in a magazine, and the reader response decides whether the editors commission a series. Serialization is the contract, a fixed slot every week or month for as long as the rankings hold. Plenty of long-running titles began as a one-shot that was rebuilt from scratch once it was picked up. This is a hiatus, and this is a cancellation. What's the difference? Whether the desk is coming back. A hiatus is the artist stopping for illness or exhaustion or the simple arithmetic of 19 pages a week, and the slot is held open for them. A cancellation is the magazine deciding, usually from the reader survey cards that come with every issue, a series drifting towards the back of the book is generally being warned. Canceled stories tend to get about 3 chapters to finish, which is why so many of them end so abruptly. This is a raw scan, and this is a scanlation. What's the difference? How much work has happened? A raw is the untouched scan of a printed page, crooked, gray, and still in Japanese, with the shadow of the gutter down the middle. Scanlation is the fan pipeline that follows. Translating, cleaning the page, erasing the original text out of the bubbles, then setting new type in fonts chosen to match. The last step is typesetting, the same craft the publisher paid for. This is a color spread, and this is a cover. What's the difference? Where the color is allowed to be. Interiors are printed black on cheap pulp, so a color spread is an event. A few sheets get the extra plates as a reward for a title that is selling. The cover is in color every week by default on better stock because it has to work as an advertisement on a rack. Count the color pages in an issue, and you can see which titles the magazine is pushing. This is a volume, and this is a chapter. What's the difference? Size of the unit. A chapter is the weekly installment, around 19 pages, printed once in a magazine and built to end on a hook. A volume is 9 or 10 of those gathered, folded and bound as a book, with the color pages reprinted in gray and often new material added. Chapter numbers run on across the whole series while the volume count creeps along behind. That is why a number in the hundreds and a number in the 20s can describe the same story. This is a Seiyuu and this is a voice actor. What's the difference? Nothing except how the job is treated. Seiyuu is simply the Japanese word for voice actor. The difference is the industry around it. Japan trains them in dedicated schools, credits them prominently, and expects them to sing, present radio shows, and fill concert halls under their own names. Elsewhere, the same work is usually a sideline of a wider acting career and rarely gets that billing. Same microphone, same job, completely different career.